It's August and harvest time, but it's also time to start planning for your winter veg growing. And in this video, I'm going to give you 3 tips and also give you some ideas of what to sow in the next few months. Welcome back to Growing Frugal on this lovely August day. And if you've not been here before, on this channel we're all about learning how to live a lower cost life while still eating healthily and as sustainably as we can by growing food and by cooking creatively. And one of the questions I've been most asked about since I started this channel was how I have leafy greens coming into the house and cooking and having salads all over the winter. And the answer is it does take a bit of planning, but also it really is worth it. And one thing most of us have learnt this year is that it's not so easy to get hold of the seeds and materials we need to grow our veg. So let's get into it now, and I'll give you 3 tips so that by the time winter comes you've got some little plans underway, and hopefully you'll have some of those salads coming in all winter long. So let's do it. So tip number 1 is you will need some kind of protection, some kind of cover if you're going to grow winter salads and greens. So your first thing to do is to do a little survey of your garden or your allotment and work out how you can have an area of cover. So this is fine if you've already got a greenhouse or if you've got a polytunnel. You're all good. For the rest of us, it's about getting a little bit creative. And I did a video last year of a little DIY hoop house that I put over one of my raised beds. So it's a 1 metre by 1 metre, very small raised bed, and I built this little hoop cover, and I'll link to the video on how to do that in this description. And spoiler alert, I'm useless at DIY and I still managed to do it. So have a look at that if you're like me and you're not so confident with making things. So you don't need protective cover for many of the vegetables you might grow over winter that are just overwintering. They're just going to be sitting there until the new season begins. But if you're in my kind of climate and you want to grow stuff like lettuce, which I really recommend, you will need some cover. So survey your plot, see what you can find and see what you can rig up to get yourself a bit of cover for whatever it is you decide to grow. Tip number 2 is to do a plan of your growing space. So I've got a few raised beds here, 4 in all, and then I grow other things in containers, and I've got a couple of plastic grow houses. Oh, and I've also got a coal frame. So at this time of year, most of us have all of our growing spaces filled with crops, but to get that planning in for your winter veg, what I suggest you do is to draw out what growing spaces you have and then do a bit of Googling and research to work out when the spaces will become free. And then you can realistically start to think about what you can grow in them. And when you're doing your plan, mark on it whether that's an exposed bed so you can plant some kind of outdoor safe wintry veg, or whether you have a cover, or you could potentially have a cover, and that area can be used for the plants that need protection. And a little tip, if you're hoping to have some winter salads, plants grow very, very slowly in the winter. It's not really the cold, it's the lack of light. But what that means is if you're going to use, say, the picking style lettuce that I grow, you will need to plant a lot more lettuce than we do at this time of year, when I can get enough for our family of 2 to eat loads of salads from about 3 lettuces. But in winter, grow a lot more, maybe 2 or 3 times as much if you have the room. Hello, Dylan. Good boy. That's my dog walking on the pebbles. In winter, plan to grow 2 or 3 times as much as you might in the summer of the kind of vegetables that are pick and come again, so that you can actually get enough to be more than a tiny salad garnish on your plate. And then step 3 is to get your seeds ordered and start sowing. There are many shortages at the moment and it can be really hard to get hold of seeds. But don't worry if your usual suppliers don't have what you need, because I bet someone in your community or one of your neighbours has. So don't be worried about asking people to see if they've got some spare seeds. And this time we've got a helicopter flying over. And that's just to add to the baby crying next door. Okay, the helicopter's nearly gone and the baby seems to have stopped crying, at least for a moment. So I have lots of seeds here that I can share, and I do that through a little local group we've got called Growers and Givers. And you may have something similar in your community, or just ask friends and family, because even if they're far away, they can drop some seeds in the post to you. So get in the seeds for the plants that you think you're going to be growing and begin growing them. So here's just a few ideas of what you could start sowing over the coming months. Here in August, you could sow some chard, and chard is a fantastic plant. You can use the stalks and the leaves, and it grows really well through winter. And I'm going to grow some under cover and some in an open bed this year to see how it gets on. And if you're not sure about chard, have a look at my sagaloo video, because I'm using chard in that rather than spinach. That will give you a good sense of what it's like. And I think that actually is my favourite chard recipe. So give it a go if you haven't already. And then moving into the beginning part of September is the main time that I'm doing a lot of sowing. So here's some ideas for what you could sow in those first 2 weeks in September. Grow lettuce. I really love my lettuce and I have a whole series of lettuce videos, but they really are a fantastic winter growing veg if you've got some covered space. So some of the varieties I like are Winter Marvel, Winter Density, and then my absolute favourite is Red Grenoble, Rouge Grenoblois. And the reason I particularly like that Red Grenoble is it seems happy at any time of year. It doesn't bolt as quickly in the summer, and crucially for winter gardening, the slugs and snails don't seem to chew on it as much. They're a little bit more bitter, but it really is a delicious one. So give that a try if you're not sure where to start. And then you could also be sowing salad rocket, spinach, kale. I'm growing some red Russian kale this year if it's survived the attack of the cabbage white butterflies. And then also if you've got a very small space, even in a little pot that you can give some cover, you could be growing some herbs like chervil, coriander, dill. They will all grow happily through the winter. Then once we get into October, you could start sowing garlic. They don't need a cover, so you can get your garlic cloves sown out and let them overwinter, and then they'll really start growing once we get into the new year. And then finally in November, you could start sowing your broad beans to give them a head start into the new year. And if I've got the space, I think I'm going to try that this year. And I believe the best variety for sowing right in the winter is Aquadulce. I'll write that in the description because my pronunciation is terrible. So I hope those 3 tips help you get started. Don't leave it too late. It is really worth winter veg growing. It's one of the most satisfying parts of growing veg for me. So even if you've got the tiniest of spaces, rig something up. If you've got a windy garden like mine, make sure it's pinned down. Oh no, another plane is coming across. There are so many planes today here. The airport is obviously well open for light planes again. So it's just the right time to start your planning for winter gardening, and before you know it, it'll be a cold, nasty November night. You'll have friends and family around, and you'll be impressing everyone by bringing in some amazing, fresh, crunchy lettuce. So do subscribe if you want to see how I get on with my winter gardening this year, and I'll be back on Tuesday with another Foodie Tuesday video.